Hi, it's Stephen here for Bland Designs, and today I'm doing another background technique video, one that I have picked up from some YouTubes. So I'm going to try it myself and see how well it works. So this is background technique number 2, and what we're going to do today is create texture using watercolor, the stencil, some bubble wrap, and some plastic wrap. And so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down some color on these two pages. So I've got my watercolors here, and this is just a cheap set of watercolors, and I'm just going to give them spritz with some water here to get them juicy. And I'm hoping this paintbrush I'm using will work okay. It's a cheap brush. I might mix some of the colors together. Oh, I don't really like this. Well, it might work okay. I was going to say I don't really like this brush. I don't like this brush. I'm going to see what I've got, something a little better. Maybe we'll use this. So, actually what I should have had was a container of water here. So, you want to put this on fairly wet and juicy. As I said, these are cheap watercolors. I'm just trying to get a little better than a wash on here. Now, I don't think, no I did not, this is my, basically my wipe-off journal, where any excess materials that I have, I just drop them in here, and I have not bothered to gesso these pages. So let's see here. So this is kind of wet, so I'm going to start with the bubble wrap, and I'm just going to scrunch up a little bit to get some wrinkles into it, and I'm going to hit this with more water, and I'm making it fairly juicy. And then I'm just going to scrunch this in here, and I want the wrinkles. And the more wrinkles, the better, because the more texture I'm going to get. At least that's the theory. So we'll see here. And then this has got to dry. So I'm just going to leave that for now with that, and I'm going to do the same thing over here, but let me get some water first. I need to clean up my brush. Okay, so I got some water and I've cleaned off my brush, and I'm just going to go over on this other page. The mixture of orange and red, and I'm just basically doing the same thing I did before. Maybe I'll put in a little yellow. Okay, I'm just going to put it up on this top part of the page first of all, because I want to save that bottom part for another technique that I'm going to try. Put in a little more red. Okay, I'm going to give this a spritz. Get it fairly wet, and I'm going to lay down some bubble wrap. And I'm just going to press that in. And I'm going to leave that to dry. Now, next technique I'm going to try is I'm going to try two things here. First of all, I'm going to put, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down some more watercolor, and I'm just cleaning out my brush, and try a little different color here. covering. And maybe I'll just take a little bit of blue. Oops. Okay. Now, I'm going to take this stencil, and I'm just going to lay it right there into the wet watercolor, and I'm going to take a baby wipe, and I'm just going to blot through the stencil. So I'm removing some of the watercolor. Yeah, I got some texture there. Not as clear. If I'd taken more off, that would be okay too. That would have worked. Could use this actually as a stamp. Well, maybe not. But now, the idea here is, on the videos that I saw, they left all of this plastic wrap and the bubble wrap to dry for a couple of hours. I'm too impatient for that. I'm thinking if you're doing an art journal, you don't want to wait a couple of hours for this to dry. So what happens if I apply a little heat to it? So that's what I'm going to do. Now I suspect that when I go to lift off the plastic wrap and the bubble wrap, that there'll be wet spots underneath because those won't have been able to dry probably through the plastic as much. But what I'm hoping is I still get some texture, and then I can just go over it after I've removed the plastic wrap and the bubble wrap with the heat gun again, and that'll just dry it. Okay, let's see what happens. Let's try the plastic wrap. Well, it really didn't give me much texture on there, not doing it that way. And how about the bubble wrap? Bubble wrap worked a little better. Let's give this a dry. But I think you do have to let it sit for quite a while and let it dry. I thought maybe I could speed up the process by drawing through the plastic, but that obviously is not going to work. So, not a total loss yet. Actually, this is, as a background, would be very nice, but I'm going to try another layer, but this time I'm going to leave the plastic wrap on this. I'm going to add some more color here. I'm going to put a new piece of plastic wrap in there, and I'm going to leave it for a couple of hours and see what happens. That's once I get this dry. And I'm going to do the same over here with the bubble wrap. Now I've got some cooling happening here. So where's my paper towel? Now again, I haven't gessoed these pages. If I gessoed the pages, the color would not soak as much into the paper. It would stay more on the top, so that might work a little better. But it depends, I think, on how obvious you want your texture. Without the gesso, a lot of the paint is going to soak into the paper, so you're not probably going to get as much detail. Whereas if you have gesso on it, it's going to stay more on the top, and you'll probably get more detail. Okay, so before I add any more color, I want to try one more little experiment here. Here's where I laid the stencil down and then pulled it up, but it was wet at that point. So now I've got my baby wipe, but I'm thinking the baby wipe itself may be too wet. So just to dry it off a little bit, I'm just going to wrap it in a paper towel and squeeze out a little bit of the moisture. Not to completely dry it out, but to get it a little less damp. And I'm going to try this again and see if I get more definition. Now you'd have to be careful when you're rubbing this, especially since I didn't put gesso down on this. I could get pilling in the paper, and I am in a few spots here, so alright, let's see what I got. Not a whole lot better. Again, the gesso might have helped, but still I'm getting something. And if it's going to be a background on an art journal page, then it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to add more color. Get my brush cleaned off here. And I think for the sake of contrast, I'm going to use black. And I'm just going to put the black in one spot so we can see the difference. Okay, I've got my black on here. I need a piece of plastic wrap. Okay, I'm just going to I'm pressing it into it too while I kind of scrunch it up. So I'm going to let that sit for a while and dry, and I'm going to do the similar thing with the bubble wrap over on the other side. I'm not going to cover this whole thing up with this color because I want to see the difference between letting it dry by itself and when I hit it with the heat gun. Just holding it in there for a minute, just pressing it down. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to try this. I don't think this is going to work very well, what I'm about to do, because the paint's going to be too soupy, and it'll probably bleed under my stencil, but what the heck. Let's see what we get. I don't think I'm going to get too much here of anything. But you know, that's the whole nature of this. We're experimenting. We're seeing what will happen. Actually, I'm kind of pouncing the paint on here. Okay, let's pull that up. Yeah, it's kind of a mess. So, I'm going to let these dry for a couple of hours, and then we'll see if we get anything different. I know if you were to use acrylic paint, this would work better with acrylic paint, but I'm going with the watercolor just to see if you can do it with watercolor. So I'll come back shortly. Okay, it's been about 2 hours with just the plastic wrap and the bubble wrap sitting here. The plastic wrap really didn't do anything. It's still a little wet under there. Maybe I didn't have enough wrinkles in it. Maybe I should have used gesso under it, but really this method for doing a background, I think, is better if you use acrylic paint. The bubble wrap, I did get some texture with it. Again, this is still wet. I'll have to go over it with a dryer, a heat dryer. I got a little bit more texture than I did when I tried to heat it through the plastic, though. So, yeah, those two methods. I think basically, if you want texture in your background, you're best to stick with acrylic paints as opposed to watercolors. Watercolors just don't have the thickness to them to hold a shape, I don't think. But anyways, you can get kind of an interesting look as well. It's just not going to be as clearly defined as it would be in the acrylic paint. So that's background techniques number 2. And I have some more that I want to share with you later, so stay tuned. Bye-bye.